Hello 3D students, let's talk about constructing with slabs. Your lesson objectives are to demonstrate the ability to roll out slabs of clay and cut them to a specific size and shape using paper templates, and using beveling and scoring and slipping to attach two slabs together to form a corner. So what is a slab? It's literally a flat piece of clay. Think of a pancake. It's just flat. So these are some examples. When you roll out that piece of clay, it looks like this, and from this slab you can cut it out and use it for many different types of forms. You can use it to construct boxes and vases, cylinders, cubes, anything that you really need a geometric form. If you want to create organic forms, those are better using pinch and coils. And often when we're constructing with slabs, we cut out all of our pieces and then we construct something using those slabs. So thing is, when you work with slabs, you have to think about the moisture level or the moisture content, right? Do you want soft slabs or harder slabs? So depending on that moisture level, your slab will be very soft or rather stiff. So softer slabs, those are great for forming organic forms or works that require a mold. For example, this bowl right here, that was created using a soft slab because it creates this impression of this lace material, as well as someone manipulated the edges, right, to create this effect. This was a mold, and then they actually wove these large slabs over each other to create this form. And this can really only happen when your slabs are soft. So softer slabs definitely have moisture, which allows one to bend and alter the slab. And these are two more examples here that use soft slabs. Now sometimes we want our slabs to be a bit more stiff or hard, and this is better in order to create boxes and geometric shaped containers, tiles, houses, and other geometric pieces such as these vases or geometric jugs, right? These are easier when the slabs are stiff because they're more firm, they're not going to bend and fall over. Stiff slabs have less moisture. Of course there is moisture, right? There's moisture in the clay up until we fire it in the kiln. But when the slabs are stiff, they have enough moisture where we can still attach them together. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how to complete the slab corner exercise. What you're going to need are the following items. You're going to need the 3x3 paper template. It's going to look like this. You're going to need clay, so see me for clay. You'll need a rolling pin, and you're going to have to share these. You'll need 2 wooden slats. Please make sure they're 1/4 inch thick. That is what I should have in the ceramic studio. So you'll need 2 wooden slats. You'll also need to share those. You'll need a fettling knife because you'll be cutting out clay. You'll need your pottery toolkit as well as a slip and paintbrush. So let's first start how to roll a slab. So you're going to receive some clay from me, and we're not going to fire this, so you don't have to worry about wedging it. But when you receive the clay, you're going to need to flatten it down first with your hand. Once you're done wedging clay and you're ready to roll a slab, don't just have that block of clay and then start rolling with the rolling pin, because you're going to have an awkward time trying to roll it. So you really need to flatten it first with your hand. Please do not flatten it with the rolling pin. That is annoying. But what you can do is flatten it using the thicker part of your palm, just to get it as flat as possible. You can also just take the clay and squeeze it out. This just gives it a good start when you start actually rolling the slabs. Now what you'll do is you'll place your slab on your clay on your workspace. You'll have your 2 wooden slats. The point of these wooden slats is they help maintain a certain thickness of your slab. For example, this is 1/4 inch thick. And the trick of using these is you're going to place the clay between these 2 slats. Because when you roll the rolling pin on top, it will not go thinner than the thickness, right? The thickness of these slats stops the clay from getting any thinner. Because if we just roll this out by hand and we don't have these slats, we don't know how thick our clay is. And then we're going to run into trouble. So I'm going to roll it out. And I'm going to pause the video a little bit, but as you're rolling it, notice how I am kind of flipping it in different directions because I want to get it to roll out wide enough points, and you will probably have way less clay than what you see here in the video. But at some point, you can see how I put the clay between the two slats, and I'm just going to roll back and forth. And at some point, this will become the same thickness as the wooden slats. And this is why I'm picking it up and turning it over, because I want to make sure it's going to become wide enough. See, if I just roll in the middle, I don't know how thick or thin the slab is going to be. So the slats definitely help me out here. Continuing on with our demo, when constructing, your slabs should be leather hard. Again, when you need to create these geometric forms, you want stiff slabs, so they should be leather hard. Now, how do you make them leather hard? So, use 2 sheets of newspaper to help them dry more quickly. For example, if I want this slab here to go to leather hard, because right now it's very soft, it's very flexible, too flexible, right? I don't need it to be this flexible. So what I can do is I can place it between 2 pieces of newspaper, and I will have newspaper in the classroom, and you just put the whole slab between 2 sheets, 1 sheet and a second sheet. And you need to leave these here for a while. I would leave them for a good 10, 15, 20 minutes. And over time, the moisture that's in the clay starts to become absorbed by the newspaper, which means at some point you can remove the newspaper, toss out the newspaper. You might have to get more newspaper at some point as well. You can see the paper's already starting to become a little saturated. So you do need to switch out the newspaper once in a while. But this is a great way to help dry out your slabs a little bit more slowly. Okay, so I've been letting this slab dry a bit more within these 2 sheets of newspaper. So something to point out though, do not leave your slabs stored in the newspaper. If you put your artwork away this way, the newspaper will eventually absorb all of the moisture from your clay. It'll probably dry out, it'll be firmer than you need it to be. But at some point, you'll need your slabs to be firm, and this is especially true for our slab-based project. Okay, before we move on and actually cut out our slabs, make sure you take your rubber rib and use it to smooth out your slabs. Very important, you can do this before you put it in the newspaper, or you can do it after you use the newspaper to dry out the slabs. But really important that we flip it over, use both sides, smooth out both sides using a rubber rib, because when we roll out our slabs, it tends to pick up any textures that are underneath that we might not want at that moment. Now, why do we use these wooden slats? The thing about using slabs is we want to have uniform thickness. So for our projects, we should have about 1/4 inch thick. If your slab is too thick or too thin, they end up drying unevenly and the walls can crack. They won't explode, but they'll crack and you'll have structural issues. So this is why it's very important to pay attention and use those wooden slats. Now, my slab is kind of firm at this point. You can always ask me to check your slab if you want to know, is it firm? But what you're going to do next is take the 3x3 inch template, and we're going to use this to cut out 2 slabs. The thing about using templates is it basically has everything measured for you. You don't have to measure right on the clay. A couple things though. I've seen students take the template and they trace it right in the middle. They cut it out right in the middle of the slab. Why is this a bad idea? Well, it's a poor use of all the space around it, right? Why are you going to cut this piece out and then have to stop, wedge the clay, re-roll a slab, and then do it again, right? So smarter idea is to cut it out in 2 different spots. So I'm going to lay the template on the slab and I'm just going to hold it down. I'm going to cut using the fettling knife. And you should keep your hand and your knife steady because we don't want to make a poorly cut slab. This is why we're using the templates. And so I'm going to go ahead and cut the other piece. I've cut out both pieces of my slabs. I'm going to put this template aside. Any extra clay you have, just hold on to it. Don't get rid of it. And our next step is what you can do if you want to make sure that the sides are actually straight is you can actually tap it on the table to kind of bring those corners back. But if you cut them correctly, you should have 2 3x3 slabs. But now we need to actually create a corner. Something to think about though. Do you want to bevel them or not bevel them? So what is beveling? Beveling is where you cut the edge of the slab so it makes it easier to put them together. The thing about working with slabs is we want to have 90-degree corners, 90-degree angles. This makes the construction easier, also as a sign of good craftsmanship. So when you put them together, in terms of beveling, the corners and the seams become easier to hide. So the side of the slab, this part, when we cut it, beveled, it looks like this. If we do not bevel it, it looks like that. So how do we bevel it? What you do is you can take one side of it, take your fettling knife, and you're just going to cut a little angle here, because you're literally going to cut off that angle. And you can always take the other side and just to cut the opposite angle, just so you know which way to go. This often helps me. All right, here we are at a different angle. So again, we're going to take the slab and we're going to cut an angle off like this. So what I like to do, the easiest way to cut the bevel from your slab is to actually cut it along the edge of the table. That's why I have the edge of my table here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fettling knife and cut it right at an angle. Now it's okay if you don't slice all the way through in one go, but you can see here what's happening, right? As I'm cutting at an angle. I'm going to pause there, pull off some of the clay, and you can see I'm already creating this beveled edge. You can see it right there. And I'm going to continue cutting at an angle. Try your best with this. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with my second slab, because when we construct them, we're going to have the corners actually meet up. So again, cutting right at an angle. If the clay falls on the floor, please pick it up. Right, I have beveled both corners of my slab, both sides, and I've also scored and slipped, because I've also scored it because we're going to now attach it together. So I already scored it using my needle tool, and I'm going to grab some slip here and place it together. But we're not done, okay? Because the problem is this slab, this corner, is still not very steady. What we need to add is a reinforcement coil. Reinforcement coil, what is it? It's a coil added to the interior corner or where two seams of the slabs appear to meet together. So what it literally is a coil. Make sure it's small, keep it thin, don't use a thick coil. If you use a thick coil, it's more work for you. Reinforcement coils, they just help reinforce the joints. They make those corners more stable. Very important when we're building with slabs. So I've attached this together, but now I'm going to include the reinforcement coil. So I'm going to go ahead and score the coil, and I'm going to score the interior right between where these two corners meet. Put some slip, and I'm going to put this in here. And then the next step is actually smoothing this coil into the corner. This is why we want our clay to be somewhat plastic. It's easier to smooth. You can use your finger, you can use a tool, but make sure it's completely smoothed out. The next step is actually cleaning up the corners, the exterior corners, and the top and bottom. Don't forget, look at both sides as well as the corner. What's going on here? Right here I can see some of the slip and the score marks. So a trick you can do to make these corners more 90 degrees, again, we want our corners to be 90 degrees because that's good craftsmanship, it looks more stable, is you take your rubber rib and you can actually like shave off the corners a little bit. Just be careful, because if your clay is really soft, it will do that. It'll get, it'll move too much. But again, just give some attention to the corners, because you're going to have to do that with your slab project. And there we go. And what you're going to do when you're done is take it to me, bring it to Miss J. I'm going to rip it apart. So here's one I made earlier. So I'm going to rip it apart. This is your mastery check. I'm going to rip it apart, and it's resisting as I'm pulling, and I can see where it's scored. I can see the remnants of the reinforcement coil. And that is it. That is your slab corner exercise.